Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a sci-fi mystery movie called Contact. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie starts as a young girl named Ellie Arroway uses her amateur radio to contact different parts of the world for fun. Her father also supports her hobby, and they often look at space together with a telescope. It is then revealed that Ellie's mother had died while giving birth to her. Unfortunately, her father also passes away due to a heart attack when she is only 9 years old. The scene then shifts to the future, where Ellie is now a grown woman and has a doctorate in astronomy. She works for a government organization named Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or SETI. Her duties involve listening to radio emissions from space in hopes of finding signs of extraterrestrial life. One afternoon, she is in a restaurant when Palmer Joss, a budding Christian preacher, notices her. The young man is enchanted by Ellie's beauty and approaches her. They then sit down and talk extensively about SETI's current work. After the conversation, the charismatic preacher manages to convince Ellie for a date later on in the week. His name is ridiculous and he looks like he smells bad, but Ellie is smitten. A few days later, the president's science advisor, David Drumlin, arrives at SETI to check on their research. The staff at the observatory throw a grand party in his welcome, but David has a preconception that the program is simply a waste of money. During the celebration, he keeps on explaining how projects have to be profitable since they use public taxes. Ellie is offended by his words and tries to explain the importance of scientific research. To her surprise, Palmer also starts yapping about how the space program is important to humanity. David instantly recognizes him as the preacher who has been building political connections back in Washington, D.C. Later that night, Palmer invites an irritated Ellie for a walk. It is obvious that a romantic chemistry is brewing between the two. They watch the stars for a while, and she tells him how her dad inspired her to become an astronomer. Eventually, they share a kiss and end up spending the night together. Early the next morning, while getting ready for work, Ellie tells Palmer to leave his phone number on the table. However, when she gets to her office, she receives devastating news. One of her colleagues informs her that David has decided to shut down their project. Everyone at SETI loses hope and realizes that there is nothing they can do. But a determined Ellie announces that she'll search for investors so their group can continue their research in a different place. That night, when she moves out of her home, she forgets to take Palmer's number. 13 months later, Ellie arrives at New Mexico and heads to Haden Industries, a company that makes parts for spaceships. She wants to secure funding for SETI, but the board of directors calls her ideas science fiction. Just as they are about to send her empty-handed, the board receives a call from S.R. Hadden, a secretive billionaire and the CEO of the industries. He surprisingly agrees to fund her research, despite the board's objections. 4 more years pass by, and Ellie is still in New Mexico working with massive satellite dishes. However, one afternoon, she receives yet another bit of bad news from a coworker. Hadden is willing to fund the project for years, but the telescopes are government-owned. The government, under David Drumlin's suggestion, now wants to lease the satellites to more profitable businesses. Therefore, it is decided that the project will be shut down in 3 months. In the meantime, Palmer has published a book called Green Lights, Man, and has become a spiritual counselor at the White House. He regularly appears on TV, explaining that people have become too obsessed with computers instead of finding the meaning in life. As the deadline day for the project draws near, Ellie finally makes a breakthrough. One evening, she's shocked to hear a pulsing noise on her radio transmitter. She and her team then turn all the available satellites to get a better signal. They work together to track the source of the pulse and eventually confirm that it originates from a star, Vega, 26 light years away. This means that the signal has been traveling for over 26 years. Ellie decodes that the pulses beep in a rhythm to represent prime numbers. This confirms that the signal is not random, but rather someone specifically sent it. The team then has a discussion and agrees to relay this information to all concerned authorities. The next morning, their observatory is surrounded by reporters, and even David Dumbshit has arrived. The head of the National Security Council, Michael Kitts, is angry that the team didn't keep the information classified, but David defends the decision, explaining that without the help of other stations, they would have lost the signal. Later that afternoon, the team, as well as David and Kitts, discover a second signal coming with the first one. They connect it to a monitor and eventually manage to decode the signals into a video message. To their utter surprise, it's a a recording of Hitler's opening speech at the 1936 Olympics. This is the first television transmission that was sent into space. Turns out the aliens have sent it back as a hello. Hopefully they didn't study it too closely. Later, in the White House, the president announces the alien contact without mentioning the Hitler video. However, when it's time to address the public, David is called as the leader of the investigation instead of Ellie. Meanwhile, the SETI team puts together all the signals and discovers that it translates into massive amounts of data. Ellie works day and night to make a presentation, compiling the data, but when she takes it to David, he reveals that the government will take over the further decryption. Ellie is enraged, as this involves years of her personal work, so she takes the issue to the White House. Fortunately, the chief of staff, Rachel Constantine, allows Ellie to keep control of the investigation, but she also says all progress must always be privately discussed with the government first, before making it public. Soon, the news of the discovery, along with the leaks of the Hitler video, spread all over the media. Neo-Nazi protesters take over the streets, while other religious groups also show their presence. As everyone on TV starts arguing science versus religion, thousands of people camp outside the facility in New Mexico. Most seem to be having fun, but Ellie is worried about a religious fanatic named Joseph, who keeps giving hateful speeches while looking undeniably challenged. 3 weeks after the discovery, Ellie goes home to find an email from an unknown sender. The text says, "I've got a secret," and also contains a part of the alien message that SETI have been working on. She gets angry over a potential hacker, but soon gets a fax asking her to attend a special appointment. Ellie has no option but to agree, because she wants to protect her research. A few days later, she arrives at the local airport and enters a private plane. It is then revealed that it was Hadden who sent the email. The reclusive billionaire, the Deus Ex Machina turtle god man, lives in that plane and considers Ellie one of his most valuable investments. He then plays a video that summarizes her life and achievements before revealing that he used to be an engineer too. Hadden also announces that he's deciphered the data from the alien signal and plays it on a screen. Turns out the data must be arranged in three-dimensional form for it to make sense. It's classic 90s Hollywood-era computer-generated gobbledygook. The next day, Ellie presents the discovery to the government, explaining the data contains blueprints for some kind of machine. A group of top government scientists then spend several hours and finally decipher that the machine is a one-person spacecraft. Soon after, an emergency meeting is held at the White House, and they agree to build the machine. The US president contacts several other nations to spread the risk and cost of building it. He also tasks a committee to select the person who will man the spacecraft. It is revealed that the White House spiritual advisor, Palmer, is also on the committee. "I'm a man of God, but I'ma shoot one of y'all into space." Throughout the next few weeks, they interview a bunch of candidates to decide who gets to travel in the spacecraft. The list is soon narrowed down to 10 candidates, which includes both Ellie as well as David. There's a lot of controversy surrounding the final candidates because 1/3 are American. Turns out Japan didn't even volunteer anyone and instead asked for a systems integration subcontract. One evening, Ellie meets with Palmer and the duo has a conversation about space travel. She explains that due to time dilation, the person traveling will only spend 4 years in the ship, but 50 years will have passed on Earth. There is a lot of tension, as well as romantic chemistry between the duo, and they eventually end up kissing again. The day of the final interviews arrives and Ellie enters a government chamber. She does incredibly well, and the committee seems satisfied with her resume. However, right before the questioning can end, Palmer cuts in to ask about her atheism. The selection committee has several devout Christians, and this makes her look bad in front of everyone. Ellie tries to defend her views, but the interview ends on a bitter note. When the results come later that day, David is chosen for the mission. Following this, Ellie cuts all ties with Palmer, but continues to work with SETI in helping with the mission. Months pass by and the spaceship is built at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral. Large crowds begin gathering there, and the atmosphere is one of excitement. On the day of the launch, Ellie attends the event and wishes David good luck for the mission. She then joins the team in the control room and watches in excitement as the preparations reach their final stage. Later, as some tests are being run, Ellie looks at the monitor and notices the extremist cult leader, Joseph, pretending to be a worker near the ship. He looks more evil than Voldemort, but he snuck into the space alien mission. She immediately warns David, and everyone runs to tackle the intruder, but it's too late. He activates a bomb that he was hiding, and a huge explosion brings down the tower supporting the spacecraft. This sends the crowd crowd into a state of panic, and the falling debris kills several workers, including David. In the aftermath of this disaster, a large funeral for the deceased is held by the government. When Ellie returns home after the event, she discovers a small computer-like device waiting for her in her room. She presses a key, and a video call alerts, revealing Hadden in the Mir space station. The billionaire is there because he's dying of cancer and wants to live out his last days in space. He then zooms in on a camera in Hokkaido Island, which reveals a shocking twist. A second ship has been built by Japan. Turns out the company that got the contract for system integration is a subsidiary of Haden Industries. The billionaire had secretly funded a second spaceship to be built in Hokkaido and kept it under wraps. He then invites Ellie to be the person who would travel in the spaceship, an offer that she readily accepts. In the next scene, Ellie travels to Japan in Hadden's private plane and meets him there. They then teach her all she needs to know about the trip and share the safety precautions. Despite the tight security on the island, the news of a second machine is leaked into the media, but no reporters are allowed near the site, and the launch day finally arrives. The technicians then check Ellie's suit and put a camera on her head so that the whole trip can be recorded. The spacecraft has a central circular chamber which is surrounded by large rings. These rotate at high speeds, which bend space and time around them. In theory, when the rings gain enough speed, a wormhole should open, and the central chamber is to be dropped into it. Ellie straps herself to her chair, and the process is initiated. The rings then begin rotating with astounding speed, folding time and space around the spacecraft. Ellie notices a strange light which she tries recording for the base team, but the footage is all static. Meanwhile, the computers and monitoring machines at the base are unable to catch the data from the central chamber, but Ellie is determined to go ahead with the mission and tells the base that she is ready for launch. Following this, the spacecraft is finally dropped, and it passes through a wormhole. Ellie describes the whole experience vocally for the camera, even though she can't relay the visuals with ground control anymore. After a while, the ship stops, and Ellie sees a distant planet which seems to be Vega. Suddenly, her ship is sucked into a series of wormholes before coming to stop at another star system. There, Ellie notices a planet underneath her ship, which houses a large city. But before she can observe it in detail, the ship is yanked into a much more violent wormhole. While this is happening, Ellie's locket starts floating, and she leaves her chair to catch it. Just then, the chair breaks off and hits the ceiling, causing the lights in the ship to go out. Ellie then turns on her flashlight and discovers a celestial event that is beyond her comprehension. Before she can analyze what it is, she begins floating down and eventually finds herself on what appears to be a beach. To her surprise, this place looks like it came straight out of a drawing that she had made as a child. Ellie pokes at the air around the spot that she is standing on. Her fingers meet resistance from an energy barrier, meaning this is some kind of a sensory illusion. Right then, a figure starts running toward her, and Ellie is shocked to see that it's her father. She throws herself into his arms, but quickly realizes that it isn't actually her father. It is then revealed that this figure is an alien, who explains that he took this form to communicate with her more easily. He also confirms that there are many alien races in the universe, but when the humans sent their first radio transmission into space, it reached this galaxy. The aliens watched humans closely and agreed that they were worthy of contact. Hence, they sent a blueprint for the spaceship as a first step for humanity to join the rest of the universe. The alien promises that this is only the beginning of their contact with Earth, but says goodbye for the time being. He gives her a smooch while pretending to be her dead father, which is some alien bullshit. And then a blinding light suddenly shines, and Ellie finds herself back in the ship, which has landed in the Japanese sea. The base team panics and contacts her, saying that there was a malfunction and the ship never left. They immediately rescue her and bring her back to the base station. There, Ellie shares her whole experience, but the footage from her camera has nothing but static. By this time, the news of the Japanese spaceship has leaked all over the world. A few weeks later, a U.S. congressional committee led by Kitts interrogates Ellie. She gives her account of traveling through the wormholes as well as everything that she saw. Ellie theorizes that time dilation could have made 1 second on Earth equal to 18 hours out in space, but Kitts immediately calls her out because wormholes are just a theory without proof. He also drops a big bomb. Hadden, who funded the mission, mission has died. Kitts claims that this whole alien signal had been a careful plan executed by the billionaire. Furthermore, he also dismisses what Ellie experienced in the spaceship. He says it was simply her childhood trauma manifesting as hallucinations. Ellie is enraged by his words and gives a speech about awe, humility, and hope. This inspires Palmer, who is also attending the congressional hearing. Nonetheless, the committee concludes that her story is also bullshit. Later, on her way out, Palmer joins Ellie in front of the cameras and a huge crowd that is gathered outside. A reporter asks him for his views on the matter, and he says that he believes Ellie's account. As the credits begin to roll, the chief of staff, Rachel, shows Kitts a shocking discovery. To the people in the base station who were watching the mission, the spacecraft had fallen for only 1 second before landing on the Japanese sea, but the static that Ellie's camera had recorded ran for 18 hours, which essentially proves her theory of time dilation. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.